So I guess just to start out, I mean, kind of the basic question, just your background and the basic question why you want to run for mayor on Maui.
Well, it's a long story of how I got here, but I've been um, 40 plus years in South Maui, and been this will be my husband and my 39th wedding anniversary year. So we've been together a long time. We have two kids, born and raised and educated in Hawaii, both with their master's degrees that they got at UH Manoa. And I've been involved in the community for about that same period of time since my kids were little, since my daughter was born about, see, she's 36 now. So I started getting involved in children's issues, the PTA, doing playgroup, building playgrounds where we didn't have any in South Maui and Kula. And that was kind of my first involvement in the community, is getting involved in children's issues when my children were little. And at that point, I got talked into running for the Board of Education because there was so much we weren't getting out of our board member back then. Ended up with no political experience, but I beat a 20-year incumbent who was the only Board of Education member we'd ever had on Maui. Was excuse me, getting up there in age and just not very responsive to the community. So I ended up doing that for 4 years and thought I'd never run for public office again. But I was just involved in a lot of the local nonprofits, educational nonprofits, environmental nonprofits, local television board of directors, and probably at least a couple dozen nonprofit boards and organizations that I've been involved in the last 30 years. And then back in 2016, I was urged by a group of community members to run for council, which was something I never thought I wanted to do, because so many issues, and it takes a lot of time to know what you're doing on the council, because there's just so many different issues at the county level. But I got talked into it because our current council member was not representing our community well. So there was a lot of development going on, and he wouldn't meet with community members about our concerns, and was somebody who was a super nice guy, a friend of mine, but he never met a development he didn't like. And so that was concerning to the community. And then, so I'm in my third term on the county council. And I was expecting that this would be my last term, because when I agreed to run, I told the folks who asked me to run, I'll just take it term by term, and I probably won't serve more than 3 terms, because I have a life too that I thought I'd like to get back to. My husband and I founded Pacific Biodiesel back in 1995, and so we've been running that company ever since. It's been very successful. The oldest biodiesel company in America. So we've been involved in the industry since the beginning. And through that, I've gotten involved in a lot of the climate issues, a lot of environmental protection issues, renewable energy and technology issues. Really interesting work. So I gave that up. As far as, I'm still involved in the company, but I don't have a salary, and I'm not working day to day. I'm on the council pretty much full time at least. People have asked me if it really is a full-time job, and I usually say I wish it was only 40 hours a week. But I thought I would kind of matriculate out of politics, and then I was asked to run for the state house position, which was being left open by Tina Weilberger, who's a friend of mine in our district. But then after I filed to run for the state, I was approached by about 30 to 40, I think we had a meeting, about 35 people showed up who really wanted me to run for mayor. And this was like 3 days before the filing deadline. They had put together some people who had agreed to run a campaign if I said yes. And because I felt like there didn't seem to be a really proactive, environmentally focused, human rights focused candidate running for mayor, that I thought about, the changes I could make if I did get in, and some of the issues like transparency and collaboration that weren't happening from the administration side. And so I agreed to do it, and it just kind of took off. But we had a meeting on the Sunday before the filing deadline, and by the end of that meeting, everybody was extremely enthusiastic And by the end of that meeting, we had over $30,000 in pledges just from an hour's meeting. So, we've done pretty well as a last minute candidate, raising the money that I needed to raise to get me through the primary. And, I just started on June 7th. So I only really had 3 months of campaigning. So I haven't been in it that long. So the money, I think we've raised close to $60,000, and that is pretty much brought us through to the primary with being able to, to do everything we need to do.
And every election's about a choice. You mentioned, you started your career taking on an incumbent. That's what you're doing this time. What about Mayor Victorino's leadership makes you feel like we need to go in a different direction?
Well, I've been on the council for, his full term this year. I haven't seen the level of collaboration or transparency. Some of the things that the council was asking for in our last budget session was, where's the itemized list of where the CARES Act money went? Where's the itemized list of where the ARPA money is going and where the TAT surcharge money is going? And we didn't see any of that. Everything was absorbed into the general fund. So we couldn't separate it out and make sure it was being spent properly, because all those different kinds of funding have to be spent in a certain way. We also couldn't access it if we wanted to cut something that was being funded by the TAT surcharge and fund something else. It felt like a way of hiding that kind of money so the council couldn't take it up and decide to use it in another way. And that's just one example of the lack of transparency that we've had. We had mixed messages from the administration's budget director when we were going through budget, being told things like, well, you can't bond fund countywide projects, and then in the next breath saying, oh, we should put that HANA project into countywide and bond fund it. So, I just felt like we weren't being told the exact truth. It was a convenient, change of facts when it needed to support one of their positions. There's other things that are very telling about this administration, and one of them being that he would never meet with a council member and our staff. So my staff got the hand in the face at the door, and we were told, no, I'm only meeting with the council member. So I'm not sure what that is designed to do, other than keep me from having somebody who could take notes. But I'm all the council members have said the same thing, that they haven't been allowed to take staff into meetings with the mayor. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense why we're not working together on these issues, and especially the COVID issues. We were told after the fact what his decisions were. We passed a resolution asking the mayor to create a multi-stakeholder transparent task force so that people would know who was on the task force and helping him make these decisions, what kind of information was coming before him. And we just basically got a response to that. We voted unanimously in favor of the resolution, and the response was, no, I'm not going to do that. In his first year, there was an article by, I think it was PBS, but there was an article after our mayor went to DC and met with then President Trump, and came back and said he agrees with all of Trump's ideas about loosening environmental regulations. And he said it was because it was standing in the way of affordable housing, which I had never seen the environmental regulations get in the way. In fact, I have 2 affordable rental projects in South Maui that I've helped usher in by bringing the developer in, that are for the lowest 60% AMI and below. And both of them are LEED certified. So it shows that you can have, you can follow environmental regulations and even go beyond and still do affordable housing.
And I was going to ask you about affordable housing. You talk to a lot of people. They think that that's kind of the major issue. Of course, the median home price on Maui, over $1 million. I mean, we hear people running for every office talk about that. What are some of the concrete solutions that you want to see done if you're mayor to address affordable housing?
Well, I'm going to continue what I've been doing, because I brought in, since I got on the council, I brought in about a half a dozen projects into South Maui. Most of them are for the lower income, the 60% AMI and lower, which is the hardest. It's the level of housing that we haven't seen addressed a lot in our county. A lot of what we've seen is workforce housing, which is more for double income families that are making 100 to 140% of the area median income. So I kind of suspected as a lay citizen before I got on the council that one of the issues was the fact that we weren't getting good communication between the developers and the community. Developers weren't going to the community, sharing their ideas, asking for input, and possibly making changes. So when I came in, the very first contractor I contacted, who was thinking, I found out he was thinking about buying a affordable housing project that had gone bankrupt in the north area of South Maui. He asked me, he told me, Maui has a reputation for being a very hard place to develop. And, do you really want this project? Because it was a for sale project that he was planning on buying and turning into a rental project. I told him I really did want it and I was going to help him. And one of the first things I told him was, which I've told every other developer since then, is go talk to the community, go to the Kihei Community Association. I set up a South Maui advisory committee for such purposes to advise and take in this information and interact with developers so that they could get some direct input on their projects. And so what happens is when you do that is that the community is able to say, yeah, we support affordable housing. Can you change these things about your project? And that the very first one, which was the Kaiwahine Village, which is the affordable rentals, that's what happened. Is the Kihei Community Association said, can you make? They gave them like 3 changes to make. The developer made them, and then they had 100% support from the community. And I would say that probably shaved a couple of years off of that project, because I've watched I've been in South Maui for over 40 years, and I've watched so many projects where the developer just comes barreling in, trying to push a project on the community, not wanting to make any changes, not really caring what the community thought. And then it gets fought, they get lawsuits. And we have a project that was called Wailea 670. It's now got a Hawaiian name that they put on it. It's at least 27 years old and still hasn't broken ground because of that, the pushback, the lawsuits from the community, the conditions that haven't been met. So it makes a big difference working with a community and working, and just basically invading a community. So we have that first project started out at $511 for a 2-bedroom apartment. And there's a second one opening up this year that is just early, in a couple of days, they're going to start accepting applications, and they'll do the lottery later on this month in August. And the first people will be moved in by November. So, that one's going to go in 2 phases, but that's the same level of affordability as the first one. So it'll start at 60% AMI. It'll go 30, 40, 50, and 60% AMI. Hey, Michelle. This is Michelle from my campaign. She actually used to work in my council office too. Tom, you're muted.
Sorry about that, Michelle. It just said iPhone, so I was like, did I double book something by accident? It's like, okay.
No, I'm going to turn the video off. I just like to monitor interviews.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay.
So, that's made a huge difference. We have, 2 affordable senior rental projects coming into the community that have been approved. We have an affordable for sale duplex project that's about 5 blocks from where I live that is starting at $395,000, the units. That's probably one of the cheapest rates you'll see for sale unit on Maui right now. We have another workforce housing, which is a little bit higher than that for workforce, development on the south end, and another Central Maui affordable rentals that has a mixture of senior and affordable. So there's a lot happening here. There's a lot of it that I feel like I had a lot to do with, because I worked directly with the developers, brought them into the community, made sure they talked to the people who mattered, who have to live with these projects around them, and all of them have gotten support. The one that we didn't approve, that didn't get support, was proposed for a wetland in a flood zone. So that out of 7 projects, we've approved 6 of them.
And you alluded to this earlier too, but hand in hand with that is the issue of over tourism that people talk about a lot on Maui. I know you already have the TAT in place, which you mentioned before. would you like to make sure that TAT funding, where that would go, and then also is that enough, or do we need to do more than just that one solution that we have now?
Well, that's not really a solution. That's a way to get some more money to address infrastructure for, because there's such an infrastructure impact that tourism has on our roads, on our environment, on our wastewater systems. And so, that may not be enough because of the fact that the state is taking all the other TAT, the original TAT was created for the counties. The counties were supposed to get the bulk of it to address our infrastructure issues. And when that kept going down and down and down, and our share of it was pretty meager at this point, that's when we got this 3% add-on that the count will come directly to the counties. So it remains to be seen if they're going to take the rest of the original TAT away from us, and if they do that, then we're going to need a larger increase to keep projects funded here on Maui. But that's not really. I don't think that's a solution. It's not going to keep over tourism from happening because it doesn't address the numbers of people that we have here. I think the only way to address the numbers is to limit the accommodations, because people make bookings before they come here. They don't just show up and then look for a hotel. And so, we are already over the number of tourists that our Maui Island Plan prescribes for Maui. It says that there should be basically not more than one tourist for every 2 people or every 3 people on the island. And we're at 1 to 2 right now, and maybe climbing above that. Some of it may be a little bit artificial at this point because there's a lot of people who weren't able to take their vacations during COVID who are now making up for that, in strides, because they kept putting their vacations off. So I think in this next year, we'll see if our numbers really are, and a lot of course, will have to do with COVID coming back. So if there's a big surge in it, people are going to stop traveling. One would think.
And another thing that we hear people running for every office, but talk about too, is diversifying our economy on Maui. Right. In particular. What if you become mayor? What are some other industries that you may want to draw to Maui, and how would you go about doing that?
Okay, and that really is the solution to over tourism, because we can cut down on our tourism reliance if we have these other sectors going. Some of them are technology. We've never really fully developed our R&T park, which was supposed to be the high-tech center of Hawaii, never took off like that. So we need to take another look at how we can get that going. The film industry is starting to be big here, and I've talked to the unions, and I've talked to young people who are getting into the film industry who would like to see it grow. Meanwhile, we have one film commissioner in our county who has no staff. So I would increase that staff, and I would try to grow the film industry. There's also healthcare. There's the local food processing industry. Our farming operations need much more food processing on the island. So agriculture is growing. We need to diversify agriculture, not just in the things that we grow, but the way we grow them, make agriculture more sustainable and regenerative. We just started a Department of Agriculture on the island, and that was one of the charter amendments that I've worked for, as well as the majority of council members. And so this is a new department for the county that's been created to help our farming industry here grow and diversify, and help food security get a foothold. So things that are going to come out of there are grants and opportunities for farmers to grow their businesses, to educational opportunities, as well as we're hoping some assistance with the USDA certification for some of our hunters. We have this major deer population over here, which is something you may have heard about, and it's an opportunity for a food source. But we can only do that if we can get USDA certified. So that's one of the things I would be working on as mayor. I actually know Tom Vilsack, who's our USDA head of our federal USDA, and so I think we need to work with the federal USDA office on how we can bring that certification here, so we can get our stuff to market. But the healthcare industry is growing and needs to grow. There's a lot of vacancies in healthcare, in education with our teachers. We've lost a lot of teachers who retired early during COVID. We have a lot of vacancies in our law enforcement offices. And so I'm I'm on an ad hoc committee that our chair of our council put together on economic diversification. And as that committee had discussions, one of the things that came out of that was how we would address holding on to some of the industries that we have and growing them. And those three, healthcare, education, and law enforcement, are three that we're seeing, major leakages out of those positions. So one of the ideas we came up with was to propose occupational preference for affordable housing. So that when an affordable housing project gets approved, that a certain percentage, like maybe 25%, would get offered to these occupational preferences areas where we need to do retention first. And that could be a solution to trying to losing so many people from these different sectors. But there's more that will come up. I mean, certainly arts and culture is a big one, especially with Native Hawaiian arts, the film industry, but there are also the theater industry, the local theater industry. There's what this the other proposal I made out of this ad hoc committee to the current budget was a economic diversification implementation plan. And this will give us a blueprint to how we get to which sectors we should focus on first and how we get to the investments we need to make in those sectors to grow them. But right now we're looking for, once we get that RFP out and awarded, we're going to be looking for major stakeholder input. We want to know from across the county, what areas do people want jobs in? Where do our young people want to work? My own son is in research in human mortality, and you can't find a job like that around here. So he's on the mainland. He's head of research at Foresight Institute. So he's gotten a good job over there. But, these are the kinds of things we want to know. What do our young people want to do with their lives? Very few of them will tell you, I'd like to work $10 an hour jobs in tourism for the rest of my life. So what we're looking for is, what do you want your career to be? What do you want your next business opportunity to be? What is attractive to you? What will make you feel fulfilled on top of making a family wage earning job, a family wage? Because what's happening is with so many people having to work so much in so many jobs just to make ends meet, they're not there for their kids. And so a lot of kids are growing up as latchkey kids. So if you can get one job, one 8-hour-a-day job that you can get, earn a family wage, a salary with benefits, and your spouse maybe does the same, but you can come home and raise your kids, and that's what's leading to healthy families too. So we have a major issue with mental health in this county, as I think the entire state does, and a lot of these things can be traced back to social ills, I believe.
And you mentioned the ongoing shortage at MPD. This is something that a lot of people on Maui concerned about, the rise in crime, concerned about that ongoing shortage. There was that recent story that we covered about the morale within the office. If you become mayor, what would you do to address the shortage and possibly increase morale? And do you think that falls on the new chief?
Well, it falls on the chief and the police commission, because the chief of police is not under the mayor. He's under the police commission. That's who hires him, and that's who can let him go. But the mayor should certainly interface with the police department, especially the chief, especially with these issues of morale, and try to, I've already as a council member met with 2 of the police commissioners, and I've met with the police chief a couple of times just through my work on the council. But I haven't seen too much interaction by the current administration as far as making a statement one way or the other. And most of us on the council we just interviewed a new police commissioner today who will likely get appointed. I'm going to say, not that anybody's promised that, but having open minds to what's going on. I think we need to get to the truth. I don't know that's actually supposed to be done by the police commission. So I would let them do their job and still try to interface with the not just the police chief, but some of the policemen that I know on the ground. I mean, I work pretty closely with the Kihei police station over here, and I know the community police officers, and there's really good guys in our police stations, and so you can't really make judgments on one way or the other on who's right or who's wrong unless you do a full-on investigation, which I think is up to the police commission.
But if you do become mayor, though, just what is that first conversation with the chief going to look like? What kind of things are you going to want to know given the current situation?
I think I would want to know what were the major changes that everybody's pushing back against and why. I have heard some stories, from both sides, and some of them not so pretty from some of the other even colleagues, that of some things that are not, that are maybe not ethical that are going on in the police department. And I've also heard from some people who feel like they were victimized by the police. But then I don't want to put a stigma on the police about that, because I know there's a lot of good people in the police force and I know them. But my first conversation with the police chief would be, what's your plan to address the morale, and how can I help?
Climate change, obviously a huge issue across the islands, in Maui as well. We've seen across our islands, these homes falling into the ocean, like all these environmental issues. What specifically would you do to address the impact of climate change, especially in the coastal communities on Maui?
Well, I've been doing a lot of it as the chair of the Climate Action, Resilience, and Environment Committee. So some of the bills that we've passed have been, we passed a benchmarking bill, which is requiring the administration to gather baseline data on all of our facilities of 10,000 square feet and larger on their water and energy use, and then set targets for reduction of that on an annual basis. So we benchmark where we're at, and then we set a goal, and then we make sure we're meeting that goal along the benchmarks in order to get there. That's part of my waiting for the climate action plan that's supposed to be coming out of the mayor's office. It was actually due in June, and we're still waiting for it. But other things that we've worked on are you may have heard about the sunscreen ban, the chemical sunscreen ban. That is, that's going into effect October 1st. But meanwhile, the Big Island has also passed the same law. So hopefully that spreads across all 4 counties, because we can't afford to lose any more of our reef. That's our first defense against erosion. Some of the other issues that we've been looking at are, and it's going to come up tomorrow, is our meeting on the wetland preservation bill. This is extremely important because wetlands are what absorbs the flooding. And South Maui alone has gone from over 200 acres of wetlands down to less than 25. So we need to start looking at, our overdevelopment and stop the bleeding. There's sometimes you get into a battle over, special interests and corporate interests and development interests versus environmental interests. But really, the environment is why we're here. It's why most people moved here. It's why tourists come here. Most of our economy depends on the environment. And also, climate change. It's here already. If we don't start doing our part to mitigate it, I don't know what else. We're the bad actors. We're joining the bad actors. So we have to do everything we can. I was a delegate. I'm on the board of ICLEI USA. ICLEI is a ICLEI. Used to stand for the International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives, and now it's just ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. But this is an international organization with about 100 countries. We have 24 secretariat offices around the globe, and the US is one of them. So I'm on the USA board. So as a climate advocate and a US and an ICLEI board member, I was one of the delegates to COP26. And I spent a lot of time talking about the initiatives that we're doing here and how I got a lot of interest from other cities and counties who want to replicate some of this action and do their part. Another part of it is regenerative agriculture. And that's one of the things we're going to be working towards, because you can sequester a lot of carbon if you farm the right way. That's going to be a huge part of it's one of the top 10, I think, ways of addressing climate change. But there's a lot more we can do. And when I was there with ICLEI, but I also interfaced with the Hawaii delegate, with the governor and Chair Case from DLNR and other people that came from the state of Hawaii. And one of the things that was impressive about Governor Ige is that he said, we have to, in a presentation, he said, we have to go beyond carbon neutral. We have to go carbon negative. And so I'm a firm believer that we have to do as much as we can, because we're going to have to make up for the people who aren't doing anything. You know, if we're a willing community, all the willing communities around the world have to do more than their share. A lot of other things like, you know, electric vehicles, the biodiesel company that my husband and I run is a poster child for the circular economy and for locally grown fuels. And there's a lot of opportunity for jobs there too. Green jobs abound. The problem with that we have with pushing green jobs is it's not the same people making the money. You know, we have to fight the big petroleum companies. We have to fight the big corporations who profit by continuing to pollute. And we have to fight selfish business interests as well.
And real quick as well, with that, water rights have been a big issue, especially in East Maui. What's your stance on that?
I voted for the countywide water authority. That is a charter amendment that will be on the ballot on Maui this year. And this is intended to be an overarching authority, a local authority that will give us control over our water system. So it's designed as an entity that can apply for the East Maui irrigation lease from the state. You know, the lease is up and they're planning on putting out a 30-year lease. We've been told, the council was told by CWRM, the Council on Water Resource Management, that if the county were to apply for that lease, they wouldn't put it out to special interest because they don't feel like the government should have to bid against special interest. So we should have done that back in January. In January, our U.S. Representative Kai Kahele sent a letter to our mayor saying, urging him to apply for that lease. And we urged him to apply for the lease and he didn't. So that lease could still be applied for whether or not this charter amendment passes. But we definitely need to get control of our own water systems, because right now we're at the mercy, whoever controls the water system sets the rates. And so farmers have all kinds of rates. I mean, my husband and I farm sunflowers now as part of the biofuel project. And right next to us is another local farmer who pays 25 cents less for water than we do. The water source is the same. That same water source goes to a local golf course for free all day long. So there's times when the farmers can't get water, but the golf course will have as much as it needs. So, you know, we have some real inequities like that. And if push comes to shove and our biggest needs are housing, food security, energy, we're going to need to maybe shut down some golf courses. You know, we're going to have housing and food take precedent, take that water first before we give it to recreation.
So anything else, Kelly, that you wanted to add or that I forgot to ask you, kind of, you know, as people get their ballots now, kind of what's your brief closing sales pitch, I guess, to voters on Maui?
Well, I think it's important to have someone with experience, and I certainly know the system. I know how the county government works. I've worked in state government. I understand the state legislature because I've been lobbying over there since when I was on the Board of Education, the State Board of Education back in the 90s. I was the legislative liaison. But it's important to have enough experience to know what's working, what isn't, and how to change the things that aren't working. And I think it's also important not to have so much experience that you're jaded. And that's why, you know, I felt like I would leave the council after 3 terms because I just really don't want to be a lifer in there. That's not my goal. Is that this is not a career move for me. This is public service. And so I'm offering you my base of knowledge from working with the state, collaborating with DLNR on many of my bills, and the DOT, and also working at the county level for as long as I have, working with the nonprofits over the last 20 to 30 years. And now being able to be in the administrative seat will give me that ability to make those decisions that you're really not able to make as a council member. When you're a policymaker, you could create the best policies in the world, and if the administration doesn't implement and enforce them, then they go nowhere. So this is kind of getting to the other side to figure out why certain things haven't been implemented or enforced, and how I can fix that in a collaborative way by bringing expertise in. I think we need more qualified people at the heads of our departments, and I know where those niches are where we need that replacement because of my last 6 years in the council. And so, that's what I'm offering people, that I'm willing to step in and willing to do the hard work to make these changes, to drive us into the the 21st century with the priorities that we should be having. We have a countywide policy plan that has a vision in it, and it has goals set in it. And very few of our politicians use that as their guide. So it's a shared vision, it's shared principles. If you look at it, and if anybody wants to Google it, it's called the Countywide Policy Plan. It was adopted into the Maui County Code in 2010. And you will see that those are pretty ubiquitous goals and principles that should be carrying us through 2030. And we're not getting there because we're not pushing hard enough on those goals. So that's what I want to do. I want to, make some changes. Because I'm a business person, and I've been in business for 40 years, about 2 businesses that my husband and I have run successfully here. I'm a results-oriented person. So I'm not that patient. And that's why I'm not going to, do my 5 terms on the council and then amber over to the next office. That's not why I'm in it. I'm really in this for public service and to make the positive changes that I feel we need.
Well, you timed it perfectly. It's like literally 1 minute and 45 seconds left on the Zoom call. So Kelly, I appreciate it. Okay,
well, can I give my website just so people can visit?
Sure, and I'll put it on the web story too.
Okay, it's basically www.kellykingformaui.com.
Perfect. Okay.